Okay, so in this video, I'm going to show you how to use this calculator. It's pretty easy. You're just going to follow the steps. Step one, you're going to enter your annual salary or your hourly rate for each W-2 job. Now, if you have more than one person in the household, that's fine. I've put enough spaces for up to 2 individuals, and that's about how many people can go on a mortgage loan application together. Okay, so here we have job number 1. The person makes $22 an hour. And then on job number 2, they get paid a straight salary, so we just put $40,000 a year. Next, we go to step 2. In step 2, it says, if you entered an hourly rate, enter the number of regular hours with a maximum of 40 that you worked each week. So if you did enter a job that had an hourly rate, then it's telling you you need to come in and tell the calculator how many hours they work in a week. So in this case, the person works 40 hours a week. Now, that person could work some overtime, and you'll notice there's not a place on this calculator for overtime. And the reason for that is this calculator is based on affordability, and overtime is not always going to be a thing. Plus, you don't want to have to always be working overtime in order to afford your home. So this is set up just based on what you would work in a 40-hour work week. Now, the area shaded is protected, which means you can't enter into anything in it. And if you try, it will give you a little notice saying, hey, you can't do that. Okay, so now that we've entered the regular hours for the person who is hourly, we're going to go to step 3. And in step 3, it says to enter your average weekly take-home pay after all deductions. So if you get paid bi-weekly, then you're going to have to divide that number by 2 and enter the result here. Now, we're looking at our pay advice for the actual take-home net pay, the pay that you actually bring home. That's the number that we want. And again, if you're paid bi-weekly, you're going to take that number, that net pay number, and divide it by 2 so that we can get a look at what you would have gotten in a 1 week's time. So for the person that worked job number 1, they are actually getting regular pay, $880 a week. But after all of their deductions, they looked at their pay stub and they really are only bringing home $670 a week. For job number 2, the person that's making the $40,000 a year, they pulled their pay stub out. They look at their biweekly. They get paid biweekly. They looked at their biweekly pay and they were like, oh my goodness. And they divided it by 2 and realized they're only getting about $680 a week. Okay, so that's how you handle that. Step number 4 is to click on the expenses debt tab below. So let's do that. We're going to click on the expenses debt tab. And here your instructions are just to keep it 100. This is one of the places people like to pretend like things aren't really what they are, but that's not going to help you in this process. So what you want to do is to go down this list, and you can change these names here if you need to, and there's a couple little extra spaces for miscellaneous items, but definitely go through, and if you need to look at your bank statement or download your transactions or whatever you need to do to get a good handle on what these numbers are, then by all means do it. Now, once you enter all of your expenses, then it will automatically total at the bottom. Again, anything that's shaded is not going to let you touch it. And here's the thing. It's important to make a distinction on this page. There are expenses and there are debts. Expenses are things that you're going to recur on a monthly basis most of the time. But the debts are things that are monthly, but they have a balance associated with them, right? So that's the difference here. So right now, you're going to enter all of your expenses. Okay. Again, you're going to keep it honest. And then you're going to be able to see really quick what your savings potential is. And that's basically your take-home income that you have coming in from that first page minus all of these expenses. And here's a clue. If this number is negative, homeownership may need to be something you put on the back burner until you get some things under control, okay? Now, this is coming from a former loan officer, a former housing counselor, and a current real estate broker, so I know from which I speak. Next, you're going to go to step 2, which is enter your monthly credit card expenses and current balances. So I have plenty of room here. Hopefully you don't have 11 credit cards. But I have plenty of room for you to put down all of your credit card expenses and to be able to put the balances that you owe on each. Now, when it comes to entering your monthly credit card expenses, you want to put the monthly payment that you make. If the minimum payment is $25, but you're paying $200, you need to put the $200 there, okay? Next, you're going to go down to step 3, and you're going to enter all of your loan payments. Now, this includes your car loans, your student loans, your personal loans, payday loans, title loans, grandma loans, grandpa loans, whoever you owe and you're paying monthly, you need to make sure you acknowledge that here on this list, okay? Now, a lot of times student loans are in deferment and you might have a balance, but you don't have a monthly payment. So with this, we've left this payment at 0, but the lender is not going to do that. The lender is going to come in here and they're going to put what the minimum payment would be, because that mortgage is going to be based on 30 years. And typically sometime within the next 30 years, those student loans are going to come out of deferment. So on this $40,000 student loan, we're going to put $330. And on this $50,000 student loan, we're going to put $440. Just making up some numbers. All right, so step 4 tells us to click on the debt to income ratio tab below. So I'm going to do that. And oh my goodness. Oh, before I do that, let me go back. When I entered those student loan numbers, do you see how negative my savings potential went? Right now, it doesn't seem as bad, because when you take those deferment payments away, then it's bad, but it's not as bad as when you put them back in, right? And something else to note, this is the housing counselor in me. When you see this number negative like that, you know that you need to make a change here somewhere in your budget. So you need to look through here and figure out, why am I spending, why is this so expensive? You need to go through. It may be something you cannot control, and it doesn't look like, in this case, maybe out to eat. So maybe you need to cut the out to eat down and maybe buy a few more groceries and cook at home, and that will take care of a little bit of it. The pets, there doesn't look like there's a lot in insurance. So you would just kind of go through here and try to figure things out. The goal is honestly for you to get this number positive before you go over here to the debt to income, but it doesn't look like that's possible. Only lowering this rent payment. But if you're in a lease, that's not really realistic. Okay, so we'll continue on. So let's go to the debt to income. Let's put those student loan payments back in there, $330 and $440. And it is what it is. So let's go over to the debt to income ratio payments. Tab. And right here, there's a little button that you can click and you can go learn more about what the front end ratio and the back end debt ratios mean. Basically, your front end debt ratio is, the lender looks at this. This is what your debt ratio is before a housing payment is included. Okay. A back end debt ratio is what your debt ratio is after they include the housing payment. Now, every lender is different. Every loan program is different, and everyone is going to have all kinds of exceptions to all kinds of rules. But from me to you, you need to know that if your front end debt ratio is over 31%, then you're already in trouble. Okay. If your front end debt ratio is over 31%, you are already in trouble. You do not need to be trying to buy a house. Okay. Okay. If your back end debt ratio is over 43%, you do not need to be trying to buy a house. Right. And it's just, you just need to just accept that for what it is, and then just get some debt paid off and then go back into it. And I'll show you how you can do that on this calculator. All right. So here, the goal for your front end debt ratio is 31%. The goal for your back end ratio is 43%. And this page will also show you right away what your monthly debt is. Now, this is your debt. This is not your expenses. This is the student loans and the credit cards and the car loans. These are your installment loans. And it'll also calculate your total balances. So you'll be able to kind of see that right here when you come to this tab. Now, it will also calculate, again, these shaded cells are protected. It will also calculate your front end debt ratio. And like I said, over 31%, it's time to go back and reevaluate some things. Right now, you're at 36% before you even add a housing payment. So when you add a housing payment, it jumps up to 70%. Now, for the purposes of this calculator, the housing payment amount that this calculator is using is your current rent. So yes, maybe you get a lower mortgage payment than your current rent, but because I don't know and you don't know what that future mortgage payment is going to be, we're just going to use your current rent as that housing payment. So if you're wondering, well, what housing payment are you using to calculate this back end ratio? It's your current rent, whatever you entered on the expenses tab. Okay, so you can play around with that number if you want to. Now, let's go back to the expenses and debt tab and get back in shape, because there is no way that you can buy a house in your current situation. So you get a tax refund and you're able to knock down 2 of these debts. You're able to pay off the $5,000 and the $1,000. So now you do not have those payments anymore. You just have the $10,000 payment, so that's good. The student loans are still going to be there, but this car is about to be paid off. So you wait and pay this car off before you go out and get your pre-approval. So you're going to get rid of that $345 payment. It's only got $2,000 left on the balance, so it's not going to take you very long. Maybe you work that overtime that we're not using and that side hustle money that we're not using to knock that debt out, okay? We're not putting that money on here, but you still have it, so you can take that money and knock down some of this debt, all right? So now we're looking a little bit better, but we still have a lot of expenses coming out, because remember, we're basing things on our take-home pay, the actual money that you actually bring home. To the lender, you might not look bad because they're using your gross pay. But this is based on your take-home pay, the actual money that you actually bring home every single month. So we're going to look at this and we're going to get this down. You talk to your boss or whatever, and you're able to start working from home. So one of you guys no longer has a big gas bill anymore, gasoline for your car. So instead of $700 a month, that has gone down to $200 a month. And so now you're in the black. You're not negative anymore. You don't have a lot of money that you can save, but you and I know that you do have extra money. You do have overtime sometimes, or you're doing whatever your side hustle is. It's just that that income is not being reflected here, right? So don't get too nervous when you see these numbers, because 9 times out of 10, you do have some side hustle money, some seasonal money, or something you're doing on the side outside of your main job. Most of us do. Anywho, so now we are looking a little bit better. So let's go back over to the debt to income ratio tab. Our front end ratio, by paying off those two credit cards and getting that car loan paid off, lowered our front end debt ratio significantly down to 25%. But our back end ratio is still really high. And that's because we still have basically the big dog debt still hovering over us. And that's the student loans and the current balance on our car. So you're just going to have to get this. You're going to have to get this credit card paid down, and when you do, you'll see. And it may take some time, but when you do, you'll see you're getting closer in line, right? Your back end debt ratio is getting down where it needs to be. Your total balances are going down. You're still higher than what you need to be. And honestly, some lenders will probably, if your credit is excellent and they don't see any overdraft charges in your bank account, sometimes they will allow you to go forth with a back end ratio that's this high. But there will have to be everything else will have to look really, really good. But you really should try your best to get that down. The main thing that's driving this is that housing payment. So if you go to your expenses tab and you think that you're going to be able to get a mortgage payment that's less than your current rent, then you can just go here and put the payment that you think that you'll be able to get. So then go back and look at your debt to income, your back end ratio, and there you have it. Right now, the rent that you're paying is unaffordable based on your income. So if you were able to get a lower housing payment in the form of a mortgage, then that would be okay. So if that's the case, then great. But if you're buying a house that's going to have a mortgage payment equal to what you're currently paying in rent, then that ratio would still need to be dealt with. So that's how you use the calculator. I hope you guys like it. It just is a very important thing. Speaking from someone who's faced foreclosure more than they care to admit, you don't want to be house rich and cash poor. It's not worth it to squeeze into a loan just to buy the house. Definitely do this and work with this until you get it right. And I'll see you soon. Peace.